Ever get that feeling at work like, you're walking on eggshells,
Yeah.
like constantly wondering, is it me or is this place just toxic?
Mm-hmm.
I've been there.
Yeah.
One time, I accidentally hit reply all on an email chain with a, let's say, lighthearted comment about my boss.
Oh,
It
no.
wasn't even that bad, but this coworker, who always seemed to be, you know, lurking,
Right.
blew it way out of proportion
Wow.
and ran straight to HR.
Oh, geez.
It was mortifying. I seriously started questioning myself, like, was I really that unprofessional?
Hmm.
It took me way too long to realize that wasn't the issue at all. The issue was a classic workplace bully,
Right.
using a tiny slip-up to try and undermine me. Workplace bullying, it's a silent killer of morale, productivity, and our sanity.
Yeah.
And today, we're diving deep into this,
Yeah.
so you can spot it, address it, and rise above it.
You know, what's fascinating is that workplace bullying often hides in plain sight. It's not always, screaming matches or outright insults.
Right.
It's more like death by 1,000 paper cuts. The subtle digs, the relentless micromanagement, being excluded from important meetings, or even having your ideas, snatched and presented as someone else's. These things chip away at you over time.
So we're talking about more than just, hurt feelings here.
Yeah.
This stuff has real consequences.
Absolutely. Workplace bullying doesn't just mess with your head.
Yeah.
It impacts your entire life. It can lead to anxiety, insomnia, depression,
Oh.
even physical symptoms like headaches and digestive problems.
Mm-hmm.
And professionally, forget about reaching your full potential. You're constantly second-guessing yourself, afraid to speak up, your creativity gets stifled, and you're just trying to survive, not thrive.
This reminds me of a time when I was pouring my heart and soul into this huge project. I was so excited about it. But there was this senior colleague who just kept chipping away at my confidence with these little comments like, are you sure you can handle this? Or maybe we should get someone with more experience on this. I started doubting myself so much that I almost quit. It took a lot of soul searching and support from my friends outside of work to realize I was being bullied and that I had to stand up for myself.
That's a perfect example of how insidious bullying can be. And it's so important to recognize those patterns. Bullying can come from different directions, too.
Yeah.
It's not just about the stereotypical mean boss. You can be bullied by a peer.
Right.
That's called horizontal bullying, or even by a subordinate, which is called reverse bullying. Each dynamic has its own challenges.
So it's like a high school popularity contest, but with way higher stakes.
Right.
Makes you wonder if some people ever actually grow up.
What's even more disturbing is that sometimes workplace bullying is deeply ingrained in the company culture itself. It becomes systemic.
Hmm.
Think about places with that cutthroat, always be hustling mentality.
Yeah.
That breeds a toxic environment where backstabbing and sabotage are almost seen as acceptable ways to get ahead.
Okay, that's straight up terrifying.
It is.
It's like the workplace version of Lord of the Flies.
Yeah.
So if we're dealing with this like ingrained systemic bullying, what can someone who's being targeted actually do? It's easy to feel trapped and helpless, especially if speaking up could mean losing your job.
You're right. It's a tough spot to be in. But the first step is acknowledging what's happening. Don't minimize it or tell yourself you're overreacting. Bullying is real and its impact is real. Once you've done that, start documenting everything.
Okay.
Keep a detailed record of every incident. Dates, times, witnesses, specific behaviors. I know it might feel a bit like you're turning into a detective, but having that paper trail is crucial.
Okay, so let's say you've got your evidence. What's next? Do you march into HR and slam your file on the desk?
Well, ideally, you'd have an HR department equipped to handle these situations effectively and fairly. But sadly, that's not always the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes, HR is more concerned with protecting the company than the employees. So you need to be strategic. Think about who your allies are. Is there a trusted coworker, a mentor, maybe someone outside the company who can offer support and advice? Building that network is crucial.
And remember, you're not alone in this. Bullying thrives in silence. The more we talk about it, the less power it has.
Exactly. Speaking up can be incredibly difficult, but it can also be incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
There's strength in sharing your story. It might even inspire others to come forward, and that can create the momentum needed for real change.
So let's say you've decided to confront the bully head on. Any tips on how to handle that conversation? Because I imagine it could get pretty heated.
This is where assertiveness is key. It's about finding that sweet spot between being passive and being aggressive. You want to be clear, firm, and direct, but without getting overly emotional or resorting to personal attacks. Focus on the specific behaviors that are unacceptable. And use I statements. For example, I feel disrespected when you interrupt me in meetings, or it's unprofessional to constantly criticize my work in front of others.
Yeah.
These statements center your experience and keep the focus on the behavior, not the person.
And what if the bully tries to gaslight you or deny their behavior? Like they say, oh, come on, you're being too sensitive.
Gaslighting. That's a whole other level of manipulation.
Right.
In the context of the workplace, gaslighting is a tactic bullies use to make you question your own sanity and perception of reality.
Mm.
They might deny events, twist your words, or even try to convince you that you're imagining things.
Yeah.
The key is to not engage in that back and forth. Stick to the facts. You have your documentation, you have your witnesses, you know what you experienced. Don't let them derail you.
Okay, so you've confronted the bully, you've reported it to HR, you've built a support system. What if nothing changes? What if the bullying continues?
That's when you have to prioritize your own well-being. Sometimes the best and healthiest solution is to remove yourself from that toxic environment.
Yeah.
That might mean looking for another job within the company or even leaving the company altogether. It's not always easy, but remember, your mental health and career are worth fighting for.
I know that can feel like a defeat, but sometimes it's the most empowering choice you can make.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You deserve to work in a place where you feel respected and valued.
Absolutely.
Your mental health and your career are worth fighting for. And sometimes that means walking away from a battle you can't win. We've been talking about individual experiences with bullying. But zooming out to the bigger picture, it's clear this is a systemic issue. It's often embedded in the very fabric of a company's culture.
So it's not just a few bad apples, but like the whole orchard could be rotten.
Exactly. What kind of workplace allows bullying to thrive? Often it's one that prioritizes, results above all else. Hitting those deadlines, climbing that ladder, no matter the cost.
Yeah.
That creates intense pressure to perform, breeds unhealthy competition. And you get a dog-eat-dog environment where people will, step on anyone to get ahead.
It's like survival of the fittest, but in a corporate jungle.
Right.
No wonder things get savage. But doesn't focusing on the system let individual bullies off the hook?
That's a great point. Holding individuals accountable is essential, but we can't ignore the environment that enables them.
Right.
In these cutthroat cultures, subtle forms of bullying become normalized. People might not even realize they're being bullied. They just think, well, that's how it is here. They become desensitized to it.
So how do we shift this? How do we create a workplace where bullying isn't just unacceptable, but unthinkable?
It starts at the top.
Okay.
Leaders set the tone. They need to model respectful behavior, make it clear that bullying won't be tolerated, and back that up with real action, not just empty words.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
First, companies need clear anti-bullying policies.
Right.
Not just vague statements, but detailed guidelines on what constitutes bullying, a clear reporting process, and a commitment to investigate every claim thoroughly.
But as we discussed, even with a reporting process, there's no guarantee HR will actually take meaningful action.
Right, which is why creating a culture of transparency and accountability is so crucial. HR needs to be a neutral, safe space where employees feel confident reporting bullying without fear of retaliation. And there needs to be a robust system for investigating those reports and taking appropriate action against the bully, not just sweeping it under the rug.
What about training? Can we train people to be less, bully-ish?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Training plays a huge role in prevention. It helps employees recognize what bullying looks like, understand the impact it has, and learn how to intervene if they witness it happening. It's about equipping everyone with the skills to identify and address these behaviors early on.
I think it's also important to teach people how to communicate more effectively. Sometimes bullying stems from misunderstandings or poor communication skills, right?
You're spot on. We need to give people the tools to handle conflict constructively, express their needs assertively, and set healthy boundaries. These skills are essential for a respectful and collaborative workplace.
So we've talked about policies, procedures, training, but aren't there bigger societal factors at play here? What about the influences that shape our views on what's acceptable behavior at work?
Absolutely. We live in a culture that often glorifies, aggression and dominance.
Yeah.
Think about how success is portrayed in movies and TV shows. It's often the ruthless, cutthroat characters who come out on top.
Right.
Those messages seep into our subconscious and influence our behavior.
So it's like we're conditioned to accept a certain level of, jerkiness is normal,
Yeah.
even desirable.
Right. And that makes it harder to recognize and address bullying. We might even start to see it as inevitable. It's just part of life. But it doesn't have to be this way. We can change the narrative. We can start celebrating empathy, collaboration, kindness. Imagine a world where success isn't measured by how many people you've trampled on, but by how many you've lifted up.
That's a compelling thought,
Hmm.
but is it realistic to expect such a radical shift in our culture?
Yeah.
How do we even begin to make that happen?
It starts with each of us. We need to be mindful of our own behavior. Are
Okay.
we contributing to a toxic work environment?
Right.
Are we modeling the kind of behavior we want to see in others?
Yeah.
And are we willing to speak up when we see bullying happening, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it feels risky? Our silence is what allows bullying to continue.
It's like that saying, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. We all have a responsibility to create a more humane and compassionate world, and that includes our workplaces. But how do we do this without becoming the office police or, constantly walking on eggshells ourselves?
Yep. That's where finding the balance comes in. It's not about policing every interaction,
Right.
but being aware, setting boundaries, and speaking up when those boundaries are crossed.
Mm.
It's about creating a culture where everyone feels safe and respected, and where calling out bad behavior is seen as a collective responsibility, not just the burden of the target.
I think a lot of people are afraid to speak up because they don't want to be seen as a troublemaker or to jeopardize their own position.
Mm.
It takes real courage to stand up to a bully, especially if they have more power or influence.
You're absolutely right. It does take courage. And that's why building a support system is so important.
Okay.
Connect with trusted colleagues, mentors, even people outside the company.
Mm.
Having that network of allies can give you the strength and confidence to speak up, even when it's hard. And remember, you're not just advocating for yourself, you're advocating for a better workplace for everyone.
So we've talked a lot about systemic change, but what about practical advice for individuals navigating this right now? We'll delve into that after.
We've covered a lot of ground from individual experiences to the larger systemic issues that enable bullying. But I think it's important to remember that behind all the policies and strategies are real people.
Yeah.
Real people who've been hurt and real people who've shown incredible strength and resilience in the face of it all.
It's so true. Sometimes just hearing those stories of resilience can be the most powerful antidote to feeling, overwhelmed or hopeless. I know for me, when I finally decided to leave that toxic job, the one where I was constantly undermined and belittled, it was terrifying.
Right.
I had no idea what was next.
Yeah.
But there was also this incredible sense of liberation. Like I'd broken free from a prison I hadn't even realized I was in.
What's fascinating about those moments is that they often reveal a hidden strength you didn't know you had.
Right.
It's like you tap into a reserve of courage and determination that was always there, just waiting to be unleashed.
It's like you finally realize you deserve better, and that realization fuels you to create that better reality for yourself. And I think it's so important for anyone facing bullying to remember that. You are stronger than you think, you are more capable than you realize, and you deserve so much more than to be treated poorly by anyone, especially in a place where you should feel safe and respected.
You know, one of the most common things I hear from people who've been bullied is, I wish I'd spoken up sooner.
Mm-hmm.
They regret staying silent, letting the bully win. I understand that fear, it's real, but I want to encourage you to find your voice, to find a way to speak your truth, whether it's confronting the bully directly, reporting it to HR, talking to a trusted colleague, or even just sharing your story anonymously online. There is power in speaking out. There is power in breaking the silence.
It can be scary, but sometimes speaking up is the catalyst for change, not just for yourself, but for others who might be going through the same thing. And sometimes the most powerful act of defiance is simply refusing to be defined by the bully's actions. It's about reclaiming your narrative, rebuilding your confidence, and creating a life so full of joy and purpose that the bully becomes a distant memory, a footnote in your story, not the whole chapter.
I love that analogy because ultimately you are the author of your own life. You get to decide how the story ends. You have the power to write a new chapter, one filled with growth, success, and healthy relationships.
That's a powerful message to end on. So if you're listening to this and you're struggling, know that you're not alone. Reach out, get support, and never give up on creating a life that you love and Weishi Life is free from bullying and full of possibility.
We're all in this together. And together we can create a world where bullying is no longer tolerated, a world where everyone feels safe, respected, and empowered to reach their full potential.
That's it for our deep dive on workplace bullying. We hope you found it insightful, empowering, and maybe even a little inspiring. Remember, you're not alone, and you have the power to create positive change, both in your own life and in the world around you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening.